Welcome back, AP. I know this looks a little bit weird because I'm sitting in my car, but I promise I'm not driving. Um, but I'm waiting around to get this Face Off Academy started that we're doing today. So I figured I'd do a little bit of work while I got here early. Now, and I'm not allowed to be in the school right now, so figured what the heck, bang it out in the car. I still got Wi-Fi out here. Now, what we're going to get into today is the rise of Hitler, the rise of Mussolini, and then also the early phases of the war. It's really hot in here. Getting into that right now, though, let's come ahead and come flying out the gate. We got to talk about Mussolini's rise in Italy first. Well, first of all, getting into it, we got to talk about Italy like right after World War One. And the state of World War One, Italy, is there's now universal male suffrage, but most of Italy still remains very poor. The Socialist Party is the strongest one in Italy. The government the socialist government did not deliver on claims and promises of social and land reform after the war, and a new Catholic party is beginning to gain strength. So what you're dealing with in Italy right now is a government that is existing in two very different poles, right? We've got a very, very leftist government that's battling with a very, very conservative government. Now, problems with all this is that the rival groups in Italy are going to deadlock against the liberal government. So you've actually, when you really look at it, like three parties going against each other. You've got the liberal government that's currently in power, the Socialist Party that's gaining a lot of strength, the Catholic Party that's gaining a lot of strength. There's a lot of political infighting. Enter Benito Mussolini, right? Well, Benito Mussolini is the son of a teacher, born of meager means, nothing much. Went to school, though, and became an avid socialist, right? Now, he realizes, though, much like Hitler, that you're not going to gain any ground with the socialists. You need to work your way through the conservative party. So, Mussolini creates this force called the Black Shirts, right? It's a militia force that wears, ironically enough, black shirts. Early on, socialists changed gears to conservatism and began to make a push for power using his militia. His small militia, the Black Shirts, begins to raid government buildings, attack government workers, protest, have marches in the streets, all kinds of stuff. And at gunpoint during his march on Rome, he's going to take power in 1922 as the prime minister of Italy, because Victor Emmanuel III, the current king and prime minister or president of Italy, just hands power over to him and declares him the new prime minister. So, after 1922, that's not me, that's Mussolini, hold on. After 1922, Mussolini establishes a fascist state. Now remember, fascist state has those four things we talked about: a violent, aggressive leader, ultranationalism, anti-socialist, and, war-hungry, right? Now, so when he takes power, he begins his campaign of fascism. He takes away the freedom of the press and begins to censor all government documents and only issue pro-fascist government periodicals. He bans labor unions. He uses fascist education in schools to tout the greatness that was the Roman Empire and how they are going to be returning to that greatness soon. He rigs elections, and he also implores the traditional roles of women. He discourages them from going to higher education, discourages them from entering the labor force, and actually touts the idea that the women will retake the home and be the defenders of the hearth, right? So, the Lateran Agreement is going to be one of his moves, where he recognizes the Vatican as a country to gain the favor of the Pope. So now Mussolini, using the Lateran Agreement, even has the religious organization of the Catholic Church on his side, right? So now the regular, the poor, the meager, the masses of Italy are agreeing with the state that Mussolini is touting, because he now has their religion, their press, and their government. So Italy is going to do a lot of different things, including invading and conquering Ethiopia. Now, remember, most of Northern Africa and Western Africa are already controlled by Germany and France, so this wasn't like a really, really big surprise. And Ethiopia was the one country that remained liberated until he came in, and he touted the ideas of the old Rome model of growing and creating a massive empire. The Italian people were extremely duped by this guy, because they, again, later on in the war, are going to switch sides, like they usually always do. Now we're getting into Hitler and the rise of the Nazis, right? So this right here is younger Hitler, during World War I, pre-stupid mustache. Now, he proclaims his party of the Nazis as National Socialism, or the National Socialist Party. Not socialism like the government, socialism like society, okay? So not socialism like Bernie Sanders, socialist on the idea of creating a German state that is touted by German people, like hyper-nationalist. Now, it is a movement born of extreme nationalism and racism led by Hitler, and it ruled Germany from 1933 to 1945. Now, let's talk about Hitler really quick. Hitler is going to join up with the extreme German nationalists at a very young age. He was born of a meager beginnings of a tax collector. His mom left his dad at an early age. His dad went through several other wives. He had some mommy issues. Was actually born in Austria. He had moved to Vienna, was an artist, applied for art school, vegetarian, is not going to gain the admittance into art school, and he's going to begin to join up with a lot of German nationalists. He's going to develop, by joining up with these people, a hatred of Slavs and Jews, and create a crude perception of social Darwinism, which leads him to the ideas of the German master race, okay? Now, he was an agent of the right wing, and he is going to greet World War I as a salvation of Germans purifying the Balkan states of the Slavs and the Jewish races. Now, moving forward, though, after 1922, following World War I, Nazi Party membership is going to multiply tenfold after the loss of World War I, the Weimar Republic giving in to the demands at the Treaty of Versailles, and the war guilt clause and the degradation of the German people following World War I. This is where he does his famous beer hall putsch. Now, that is when Hitler is going to assemble a militia of his own and have a armed uprising in Munich. It was inspired by Mussolini's movements. So, in his beer hall putsch, it was unsuccessful. Didn't work. The Weimar Republic pushes it down, so Hitler will be arrested and put on trial. He is going to denounce the Weimar Republic openly and publicly, which will end up in the newspapers, earning him a lot of acclaim, a lot of press. Now, while in prison, he issues his Mein Kampf, which is his struggle, his book, where he touts racial purity and space, Lebensraum, which means that the German people need more room to live, right? That they actually need to conquer Europe because German master race people need as much room as possible. He proclaims the Aryan race, the perfect race of German blue-eyed, blonde-haired babies, and then also coins the idea that Germany and this state he wants to create needs its Führer, or its leader, okay? Now, in 1929, the Great Depression is going to smack Germany in the mouth, skyrocket unemployment at 33%, while the Jewish community actually still stays viable, and that is going to catapult Nazis into the spotlight. They then become the dominant voice in the Reichstag, and actually earn a lot of seats in that lower legislative house. This is going to lead to a breakdown of the German government. The president, the current one anyway, was the aging war general Hindenburg. So, he couldn't stop the economic collapse and tried to actually liquidate the Reichstag out of fear of Hitler and his growing following. Now, he wanted to try and rule alone. That's only going to make things worse because Hitler is going to appeal to most of the middle class and gain the support of the conservative military. A lot of the aristocrats, the right-wing aristocrats, didn't like Hitler. They thought he was too extreme. But the middle class thought he was like a breath of fresh air. Now, the left is going to be split over should we be socialist or should we be communist, so Hitler struck at the perfect time. An unorganized left that couldn't decide between socialist and communist, a split conservative group that literally the small minority aristocrat status doesn't like you, but he gained the overwhelming support of the large middle class. Hitler is going to be legally elected chancellor in 1933. Okay? Now, the second he's elected chancellor legally in 1933, his first acts are going to be like the first one he does is the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act was pushed through the Reichstag after he brought it back, and it's going to actually make him an absolute dictator for 4 years. Then he begins his purge, right? He begins his purge. That is the execution and assault, just like Stalin, on anyone who would challenge Hitler for power. Now, there was a group called the SA, and the SA was like a military organization. Hitler believed that the SA would challenge him for power, so he creates his Schlussstaffel, the SS, and the rise of Himmler. Heinrich, that is Himmler, okay? This is Heinrich Himmler, one of his most trusted advisors. He establishes him as the ruler and the cohort of the SS, okay? So, there we go. Get back to present. All right, there it is. Now, the rise of the SS, his secret police, right? That is going to create. So now he has effectively created, using the SS, a one-party system in Germany. He press outlets, all press outlets, as in newspapers right here, are going to be placed under Nazi control, and the propaganda push begins, right? So, remember, Hitler's two programs are race and space, right? So the campaign of race begins when he uses the printing houses and the newspapers that he has brought under Nazi control in the Reichstag to actually create a state-ran information corps and a campaign against undesirables. Now, undesirables is not limited to just the Jewish community. Undesirables include people of different sexual orientations, African descendant people, Slavs, Croats, just about anybody that's not the German master race. He also denounces people like the French as an inferior Latin-born people. Now, by 1934, the Jewish people and the Jewish community in Germany are going to be forced to give up their public professions, including doctors, lawyers, musicians, writers, anything that can be seen in the public eye. Then the Nuremberg laws are going to come down in 1935, creating a classification of the Jewish race as being Jewish people are anyone born of 3 or more ancestral Jewish people or grandparents. Now, that is going to outlaw also relations between Jewish and non-Jewish people, no Jewish to non-Jewish marriage, no Jewish to non-Jewish sexual relations. So, this is leading a massive front against the Jewish people of Germany. Now, 1938, he pushes for the state-ran, state-sponsored Kristallnacht, which is also known as the Night of Broken Glass. That is a deliberate attack on the Jewish community. Now, a lot of you are sitting there asking yourselves, why? Why would anybody of basic cognition ever agree to these things, given the fact that it's so violent and oppressive? Well, he successfully gains German middle class and regular German influence to get on board with his campaign of race through these following things down here: public works, economic recovery, Aryanization, which is when during the night of broken glass, and then also during when the Jewish people were forced to give up their public professions, enter in German people to replace them, right? So taking those businesses away from Jews and giving them to German people, that is Aryanization. Also, his Strength Through Joy campaign. Strength Through Joy was this idea where working class families would be given paid vacations. Where working class families, creating new parks and public spaces and beautiful workspaces, and creating new holidays like Hitler's birthday, as well as a boosted up Christmas time, and then also just the massive uses of propaganda. But the Strength Through Joy is the building of all those parks and paid vacations and things like that. Now, the public works, what I mean by that is this bad boy right here. That shovel that you can see right there was the German-sponsored Labor Corps. Take their gun, give them a shovel. So the public works, what I mean by that is the increasing of roads, infrastructure, railroads, and the boosting up of the public works sector and the infrastructure by giving German men who were unemployed jobs, right? Deliberately giving them jobs and paid leave. Now, then he's going to successfully Hitler takes unemployment from 30% to 2%. So unemployment was almost unheard of under his regime. That's going to garner a lot of support from the German people for this anti-race campaign. Also, he touted the ideas of the traditional German mother. The idea of he discouraged higher education, just like Mussolini. He encouraged them to re-enter the household. He encouraged them to be the defenders of the hearth and the homeland, and the ideas of the traditional working German mother. Well, not working, but the traditional home-bearing mother in Germany, right? The caretaker of the Aryan race. Also, there's going to be an increased amount of consumer goods that are going to increase the ideas of the Nazi propaganda machine. Volkswagen is one of these, the people's car as it was coined. This right here is the people's radio. They said if you're going to listen to what the Fuhrer has to say, listen to it on the cheap, affordable people's radio, right? So as you can tell, Hitler was a very a master of the government practice of currying favor of the middle class. Now we got to get through 2 slides real quick. But what's going to happen is appeasement and territorial expansion, right? I think it's 2 slides, right? Yep. Oh, 3 slides. So anyway, we're at 15 minutes right now. Let's keep cruising. So appeasement and territorial expansion. Germany is going to exit the League of Nations in 1933. Under the advisement of Adolf Hitler. And he's going to proclaim that he is not going to follow the Treaty of Versailles ideas on demilitarization of Germany, and he's going to begin to build up the military. The immediate response from the rest of Europe should have been to suppress this. However, they adopted a concept called, star this up please, appeasement. Now, appeasement is the idea that the British actually touted, which basically was the French foreign policy as well, of letting Germany do whatever it wanted to do. Oh, wait, that's supposed to say World War II. Okay, this is supposed to say World War II. Prior to World War II, that aimed at literally letting Hitler do whatever he wanted to do to avoid war, basically because Europe was still horrified and scarred from World War I. Also, appeasement was adopted because the British believed, especially the higher-up British, believed that using Hitler as a tool could be successful in letting him crush the Soviet threat from Russia. Well, this is going to just be a pipe dream, and it's not going to work. Hitler is then going to occupy the Rhineland, which is that buffer state where France was occupying, trying to force Germany to pay reparations back. And this is going to violate the Treaty of Versailles in 1936. The Rome-Berlin alliance, or the Rome-Berlin axis, is going to form, which is a direct military alliance between Italy and Germany. And then Japan, trying to tout a new fascist state under Emperor Hirohito, is going to join in 1936. So Germany and Italy are going to intervene in the Spanish Civil War as well, where they're going to basically support the fascist dictator's overthrow of the Republican government. And that fascist dictator's name is Francisco Franco. And they're going to support him, and that Francisco Franco is going to be a successful victor in Spain and create a fascist state there. Then Lebensraum is going to accelerate, which he is going to annex Austria. And then in 1938, Chamberlain, who is the British Prime Minister before Winston Churchill, is going to allow Germany to annex Czechoslovakia. Not specifically Czechoslovakia, it was called the Sudetenland. It's the border area around Czechoslovakia. That is really messed up because that's appeasement still in action, because Britain literally allowed Germany to territorially expand, right? So that is the Sudetenland right here that he actually annexed. He is then going to take Czechoslovakia in 1939. So Hitler is then going to threaten to invade Poland due to the fact that German minorities live in this one little area of Poland known as, what's that place called? It starts with a D. Danzig. All right, anyway, now. So uses German minorities as that rationale. Oh, we have some German people that live in Poland, so we should invade. Chamberlain and France are then going to say that's the last straw. If you invade Poland, we're coming for you. So Hitler, in an about-face really, really quick, signs this thing called the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact with Stalin. And Stalin agrees to not attack Germany if they don't attack them. However, within this Non-Aggression Pact, there's a by-clause that says when Germany invades Poland, they'll give half of it to Stalin. So September 1st, 1939, the Nazis invade and rock Poland. Britain and France then enter to declare war. All right? So, really, really quick, let me back. So begins World War II. Now, the German Blitzkrieg is going to be used, which is German for lightning war, which is the use of fast and hard bombing strikes paired with very aggressive one-sided troop movements. So, what's going to happen is by the spring of 1940, Denmark, Norway, and Holland are going to fall under Nazi occupation using this lightning war technique. The Nazi forces are going to split the British and French forces in Belgium and trap the British forces at the area of Dunkirk, which many of you have seen that new film that's came out. The British are going to successfully pull all of their troops out of Dunkirk, but leave their equipment behind. Now, the Nazis are going to then go in and occupy France by June of 1940 when they storm into Paris and take it over within 2 weeks. Now, the crazy thing about this, though, is the south of France is going to make agreements with the Nazis to stay free by refusing to help out the northern French against the Nazis. That was an area called the Zone Libre, which is actually called the Free Zone. Now, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria are going to join the Axis powers. They were not taken over or annexed. The Swiss, the Soviets, and Spain are going to remain friendly neutrals. Within 1 year, Hitler conquered everywhere with the exception of Britain. And this is the map that actually shows that conquering. So tomorrow, or on Monday, we're going to talk about the Nazi occupation of Europe, and we're basically going to blast all the way through World War II, and then we're going to start reviewing with Grudge Ball Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. All right, so good job. I hope y'all have a fantastic Mother's Day. We moved through this stuff quick, but it's a lot of stuff you already know. So get after it. Make sure you don't mute me, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good afternoon. Have a good Mother's Day. Tell your mothers I said hi. Bye, y'all.